Let's get after it today. Have you ever stopped to think about how different your life could be if just one decision in your past went differently? Have you ever stopped to think about how your life could be different if your family moved from where you live to a different city? Have you ever stopped to think about how your life could be different if you went to a different college than you went to, or if you chose a different career path than the one you went on? It's fascinating how our lives can be affected by just one seemingly insignificant decision. Social scientists have this interesting term for it. They call it the butterfly effect. And the butterfly effect is part of what's called chaos theory, which literally means that when a butterfly flaps its wings, it's relatively insignificant. But that little flap of a wing sets off a little flutter of air, which makes one little change, which makes one little change, which makes one little change. And the whole world is impacted by every single little decision that's made. Now, what's funny to me is, as a pastor, I've had hundreds of conversations with people over the years who've said to me things like, man, if I just wouldn't have gone to that party, if I just wouldn't have had too much to drink, if I had just had a different circle of friends, if I had just not married this person, if I had just not gone on that spring break trip, if I had just not trusted this person, if I had just not been alone with this person, my life would be entirely different. And that can be true. But I also want you to stop to think today about how far God has brought you, how he has carried you through every season of your life. I was thinking this week about that question, and I thought, how different would my life be if along the way I made different decisions? How different would my life be if I chose to go to a different college? I wouldn't have met the greatest decision in my life, the love of my life, Liz Burns. I wouldn't have met her. My life would be different. This church wouldn't exist if I had probably gone to a different college. Towards the end of high school, I had this interesting thing kind of presented to me. There was this brilliant man in the church I grew up in, and he had this big, audacious, God-sized dream. It was called global aid. And his whole idea was, as he looked at the world, he saw that there were massive needs. There was poverty, there was food issues, there was education issues, there was health issues. And he wasn't content to do nothing about it. So he dreamed this impossible dream. And the dream was, come up with a business plan, get investors to give $2 billion into this fund. And from the fund, he was going to meet needs around the world in ways that we could only dream of. Turn airplanes, massive Boeing airplanes, into hospitals that he could fly into disaster zones. Incredible. Go into remote parts of Africa where agriculture is challenging and where there is not enough water to sustain fish life, and teach them the culture of raising fish. Like, he was going to fix food problems and health problems and all kinds of things. And then the word got back to me that he wanted to hire me as this high school student. I would have a full-time salary going into college. He would pay for my college, all kinds of incredible things. And all of this was supposed to happen on September 15th, 2001. All the papers were done. All that had to happen was the people had to come together, sign the papers, and $2 billion would flow into his account, and he would go out. If this happens, my whole life is entirely different. But if you remember history, September 15th was preceded 4 days earlier by September 11th, 2001. And the moment the planes flew through the towers, the whole global economy froze up and money stopped moving. And the dream never really took shape the way he envisioned it. And that never happened for me. At the end of college, I thought, man, I've got my whole life in front of me, could do anything I want. And I get a phone call one morning from the president of my university, and he says, this is so out of left field, but I gave your name to someone for an incredible life-changing job. And I was like, talk to me, man. What are we doing? And he said, there's this man named Reinhard. He's this world-renowned evangelist. He's popular in Africa, and he does these massive events called crusades where somewhere between 500,000 and 2 million people will come to hear him preach. And he needs a new assistant. The man who's worked with him and traveled with him from all these years has just retired, and I put your name in. You're the only name I gave him. And I was like, oh man. This would have been incredible for me, but through a whole series of things, it turned out to be the wrong decision. But as I was thinking this week, I thought, man, God, you spared me. And God, you showed me some stuff, but it wasn't the right decision for me. But how different would my life be if I had made that decision? Now think about your life for just a moment. How different would your life be? This church may not exist were some of those decisions made. Some people's marriages may not have been restored were not for that. People that have made the decision to follow Jesus or have gotten baptized here in our church, some of those things might not have happened were it not for some of those decisions. I want you to think about your moments. And I want you to realize, this is the whole point today, you are one decision away from an entirely different life. As you dream up your life, you need to understand that you are one moment, you are one decision away. And this works positively and negatively. You are one bad decision away from off-roading your whole life and ruining your dreams, but conversely, you are one God moment away. You are one moment of courage away from stepping into the divine moments of opportunity that God has for you that could forever alter the direction and the directive of your life. So today as we dream, I want to challenge all of us. Let's be the kind of people who understand what it means to trust God, not at the beginning of a dream, but all the way through the dream. I want to give you one thought before we get in today. Last week as I was teaching, I talked about opposition and how opposition has this way of shaping our dream. We have to understand how to deal with it. And I talked about the faithfulness of God. And as I was talking last week, I thought, man, we got to help our people remember the faithfulness of God. So today as you leave, we want to give you a journal from Access. It literally says Dream Year. And here's my hope. My hope is that as you get this, that you'll have the courage to write down the moments of God's faithfulness to you so that as you dream, and as you get in the middle of your story, and as the difficult days come, and as those challenging moments come, and as your dream feels like it's so far away that God could possibly never do it, I want you to remind yourself by writing the faithfulness of God. Everybody's going to get one of these on the way out today. Let's get to work. Today, I want to go a different direction as we talk about the fulfillment of our dreams. The last couple of weeks, we've talked about Nehemiah and the process of discovering a dream, having a vision from God, and living a dream. Today, I want to talk to you about what happens when the dream comes true. To do that, I want to spend our time talking about the life of one of the heroes in the Bible, a man named Joseph. But to get to the story of Joseph, I want to go back and I want to tell you where he came from. Joseph's father was a man named Jacob. As you study the history of the Bible, so many world religions even point to these people as our forefathers. We serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob is Joseph's father. Jacob has an interesting story. At one point, he falls in love with this girl named Rachel, and Scripture says about her that she is beautiful. She is easy on the eyes, and he falls head over heels for her. Rachel had an older sister named Leah, who Scripture says wasn't as easy on the eyes. Imagine your legacy. Imagine the Bible is written, and some 5,000 years later, people are talking about you, and it says, you ugly. Imagine that, right? So Jacob goes to these girls' father and says, I want Rachel to be my wife. He says, work 7 years for me. He works 7 years. The father agrees to give him his daughter in marriage, but because Leah, the older sister, wasn't married yet, Jacob is tricked by the father, and he marries the wrong woman. Now, this is a part of the Bible that I've always struggled to understand. I'm just going to be honest about it. But it says the next morning, after consummating the marriage, when he woke up, he realized he had married the wrong girl. Okay. How many Coors Lights do you have to have? Okay, we're on the same page. So he marries this girl, Leah. He's not in love with her, but it is what it is. He works 7 more years, and he marries the love of his life. With the older sister, Leah, he has 10 children. With the younger sister, whom he adores, he has 2. Now, parents aren't supposed to have favorite children, but he does. And his favorite is Joseph, the firstborn of his favorite wife, Rachel. To show him that he's the favorite, he bypasses the first 10 sons born with Leah, and he gives his son Jacob a gift. Now, many of us call it the coat of many colors, and maybe that is kind of true, but really what we know about it, it probably was some sort of ornate tunic. It was this beautiful, somewhat colorful piece that people of nobility and people with massive finances would have, and he has it. And it's just so interesting to me that the father, Jacob, passes up the 10 older brothers. Like the 10 older brothers wear great value clothing from the clearance rack at Walmart, and Joseph's Gucci'd up. That's where we're at in this moment, right? And so he makes no bones about it. Rachel is his favorite wife. Joseph is the son of Rachel, his favorite wife. Therefore, he's the favorite. So you've got all these issues causing there to be strife between the 10 older brothers and Joseph. Are you understanding this? And now to make it worse, Joseph has a dream. And in this dream, let's just read it. It says this in Genesis chapter 37. One night Joseph had a dream, and he made a mistake. He told his brothers about it, and I want you to pause here because I want you to see this. They hated him more than ever. What does this imply? That they already hated him. In fact, you need to understand that you should be careful with whom you share your dream. There are some people who would get no more joy out of this life than to step all up over your dreams. And they already hated him, and it says they hated him all the more. But he goes on, he says, listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundle stood up and your bundles all gathered around and bowed down before mine. Now, you don't have to have a PhD to understand what this is about. He had this dream that someday his brothers would bow before him. His brothers were smart. And they said, so, hold up. You think that you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And I want you to see it again. And they hated him all the more. Why? Because of his dreams. Because of the way he talked about his dreams. The story goes on that he has another dream. And in this dream, the sun, moon, and stars bow before him. And he tells his mother and father, and they say the same thing, like, do you actually think that someday we will bow before you? Well, the story goes on, and there's this day where Joseph's 10 older brothers are out in the fields doing whatever they were doing. And Joseph comes walking up to him, and it says this. It says, when Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. Okay, you ever been mad at a brother or sister? You ever had a fight with a brother or sister? I've got 3 kids. They're always at it over something. I don't think anyone has ever schemed to kill each other in my family. Like, that's how angry they are. And I want you to listen to their language. Here comes the dreamer. They're defining him not by his function, but by his dreams. Come on. Let's kill him. Let's throw him into one of these empty pits, these cisterns. And we can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. And they get this terrible idea that here's what we're going to do. We're going to pretend that he's dead. We'll kill him, and then we'll bring back something bloody, and we'll say, Dad, we were just out walking back, and we found this coat that you gave him. But Joseph is dead. They thought to themselves, what will happen is the father will grieve, and then they'll move on, and we'll no longer have to deal with that annoying little brother, Joseph the dreamer. It brings up this point that there's 3 types of people when it comes to dreams. The first group of people is those who are in the game. I want you to notice what they say about Joseph. They say, here comes that dreamer. Here he comes. And I said this a moment ago. I want you to get it again. They don't talk about what he does or they talk about his dream. Here comes the dreamer. When people think about you, what word do they use as a metaphor for you? What picture do they have of you? Here comes the dreamer. There's people who are in the game. There's secondly people who are watching the game. And I love what it says his brothers say. They say about him, we'll see what becomes of his dream. There's people who their whole function in life is just to watch. This is no different than the spectators up in the cheap seats at the arena when the Orlando Magic play basketball games. You ever sat up in the nosebleed sections? And there's always that one obnoxious fan who's had so much to drink, and he's screaming the whole game as if his voice matters at all. Have you experienced this before? And they're yelling. They're so dumb and obnoxious. There's also someone else yelling at the players. It's the coach. And there's a massive difference between the critic in the cheap seats and the coach on the sidelines. The coach has your best intention at heart. He wants to make you better. The critic just wants to yell and to see what you do. There's people in the game, there's people watching the game, and then there's those haters that hate the game. I want you to see what his brothers say about Joseph. Come on, let's kill him, and by killing him, we'll kill his dream. We'll throw him into one of these sisters, then we'll see what becomes of his dream. Here's what I want you to understand. Joseph is one of 12 brothers. He's one of 12 who all share the same father, and yet there's something different on Joseph. There's something different on his life, and I want to say to you what it is. It's a dream, and I came to say this to you. A dream will make you different. A dream will cause you to stand out in a world where people eke through a day. In a world where people try their best just to get through their workday so they could get home, eat the same boring dinner, watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, go to bed at the same boring time and wake up the same next day, doing it over and over and over again, people who dream stand out like stars in the sky. There's something different about them. One of the things I respect about Joseph is given favor of his father. He's given the favor of this Gucci'd out coat. And what does he do? He could have said, thanks, Dad, I love it, and he could have hidden his favor, but he chooses to walk in it. Joseph is given dreams, and he could have allowed his life to fade into the backdrop of obscurity, but he has the courage to speak his dream. But listen to me, until you speak your dream, you'll never live your dream, until no one knows your dream, like no one can hold you accountable to your dream. Here's what you need to understand. There's some people in your life who won't get it. In fact, I could say it like this: people dissatisfied with their life will try to get you to hate yours. So Joseph shares his dream. He's different because he dreams and he shares it. His brothers hate him for it. Why? Because the fact that he has a dream reveals the stark reality and the stark difference that they don't have one of their own. And here is the story of Joseph for those of you who may not know. Joseph starts in his father's house, place of prominence. He's given the name Joseph, which means God will add. What a beautiful name. Some of his other brothers' name literally mean pain. Can you imagine that? Like, come here, pain. Like, imagine that's your day every single day. He's in his father's house, a place of favor. His brothers at age 17 throw him into a pit. And you might think this is really terrible. This is where the story gets terrible and it gets worse. No. Instead of killing him, at least they spared his life. And as this is happening, a band of gypsies comes walking through town, and the brothers think to themselves, we can actually make some money on this. We'll sell our brother to these gypsies, and whatever they do with him doesn't matter to us because he's gone and his blood isn't on our hands. These traveling gypsies literally take him to Egypt, and they sell him into slavery. But Joseph lands in a place called Potiphar's house. Potiphar was the right-hand man to the king. He was second in command. And Joseph is in this place, and he works himself up into an amazing job. He works himself into a place of prominence. In fact, Scripture says about Joseph that Potiphar was so taken care of that all he knew that he was responsible for was that which was right in front of him. Joseph took care of everything else. All Potiphar ever had to deal with was what was in front of him. Potiphar obviously noticed him and promoted him, but so did Potiphar's wife. Potiphar's wife is attracted to him, so she tries to seduce him. It's this really interesting story, and she begs him to come to bed with her, but Joseph is a man of morals, a man of morality. He says he can't do that, and immediately he puts himself into a lose-lose situation. If he sleeps with her, he's disobeying God's desires. If he sleeps with her and Potiphar finds out, he'll have him put to death. If he doesn't, though, he's rejecting the advances of the wife of the second most powerful man in the known world, and she can snap her fingers and also have him put to death or thrown into prison. And he rejects her advances. Now look, this is going to be off topic, but I grew up going to church believing that Potiphar's wife had to be gorgeous, like absolutely drop-dead gorgeous, and so she tries to seduce him, and I thought Joseph is his hero. But the Bible never says anything about her looks. Maybe it was a much easier decision for Joseph than we know, okay? Read between the lines. There's a lot of room there. Regardless, she tries to seduce him, and he goes to run away from her. And as he's running away, she grabs a hold of his tunic or whatever he's wearing and gets a piece of it, and he takes off running, and she accuses him of assault. Now comes this terrible moment, seemingly, in Joseph's life because he's thrown into prison. Interesting reading between the lines again. If Potiphar really believed that he had assaulted his wife, he would have had him beheaded. This says maybe he didn't actually trust his wife. That's a separate issue for a different day. But instead, he has him thrown into prison. Now, this feels like this is the end of a story. What a tragic story. He goes from his father's house to the prison, but in prison, he meets two men who come to him and say, I had a dream. And Joseph tells them what their dreams mean. One of the men, he said, here's your dream. God is going to promote you out of this place to the place of prominence where you will work for Pharaoh, and you will have Pharaoh, the king, the emperor of the known world. You will have his attention. And just as God said through Joseph, this happens. And Joseph says to the guy, before you go, hey, listen, when this comes true, please don't forget about me. Don't forget, I'm here in prison rotting away. I didn't do the thing I was accused of. Please don't forget about me. The man goes up to Pharaoh's house just as promised, but he forgets about Joseph. And I don't know exactly how long Joseph was in prison. Scholars argue over that amount of time. But here's what I know. Between the pit and Joseph being promoted to Pharaoh's house is 13 years. 13 years. Finally, after 13 years from the pit to this moment, Pharaoh has this dream, and he can't shake it. He doesn't understand what it means. So he says to these guys who are close to him, does anyone know someone who can interpret dreams? And immediately that man remembered his friend Joseph, who was in prison. He says, you're not going to believe this, but when I was in prison, there was this man. He claimed he was falsely accused, and he could interpret my dream. In fact, he knew that I would be here someday with you. He can do it. Joseph goes to Pharaoh. He interprets his dream. And here's what Pharaoh's dream meant. There's going to be 7 years of prosperity, 7 years of plenty, 7 years where our harvests are huge. There's going to be plenty of food. But then after those 7 years, there's going to be 7 years of drought. So we need to be careful in the first 7 years to store up food and grain so that we can get through the next 7 years. Pharaoh is so moved by this that he makes the decision to promote Joseph from prison to second in command, overseeing this whole 14-year process. It's amazing. Now, here's what we tend to do. We tend to look at the days in our life, the moments in our life, and the seasons of our life, and we tend to attribute words to them. We will say that the moments in our life are good or bad. We will say they're good or bad. How was your day? Nah, it was pretty good. How was your day? I lost my job. It was bad. How was your day? She said yes to a date. Oh, he broke up with me. We said, I do till death do us part. He served papers today. We tend to look at our moments and we tend to put a word on it. This is a good day or a bad day. This is a good season or a bad season. If we go back to Joseph's life, we might look at it and say, he was in his father's house. That seems like a pretty good day to me. Favored son, Gucci'd out, good day. Thrown into a pit to fight for his own life by his brothers, pretty bad. Potiphar's house seems good, turns bad. In that bad situation, he's thrown into prison. How much worse could it get? And yet God was at work the whole time. But can I show you something? We put words like good and bad on our days. We put words like good and bad on our seasons. God doesn't see it the same way because he sees time from an entirely different perspective. Here's what I love about the story of Joseph. There's this sneaky word that you find in every season of Joseph's life, and the word is this, it's success. It says in every season of Joseph's life, he was a success. How is one a success when you're thrown in prison? How are you successful in the eyes of God and in the eyes of the world when you have run out of options, when your dream seems like it's come to a screeching halt, and when your dream is on life support? How are you a success? Scripture tells us what it is. It's success equals obedience. And he's obedient to whatever God asks him to do. And here's what I love about the story. In every season of his life, in all the days that we would call good, and in all the days that we would call bad, God was somehow at work in his life. Why? Because he chose the pathway of obedience. So what do we do with that? Well, the story goes on. Now Joseph is at the right hand of Pharaoh, second in command to everyone. He's overseeing this massive project to make sure there's plenty of food stored for the next season, and Joseph has the first moment where his dream is realized. Genesis 42. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all of its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, I want you to see this, they bowed down. Remember that earlier? They bowed down to him with their faces to the ground, and as soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly with them. Where are you boys from? From the land of Canaan, they replied, and we're here to buy food. And although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. I want you to remember this. 22 years have passed. 22 years. He was 17 when they threw him into the pit. He's 39 years old at this moment. Think about how much you change from 17 to 39. Think about how long 22 years is. And he recognizes it's his 10 brothers from his father's first wife. But they don't recognize him. Then he has this moment of fulfillment. He remembered his dreams about them, and he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." No, my lord, they answered. "Your servants, we've only come to buy food. We are the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men and not spies." "No," Joseph said to them. "You have come to see where our land is unprotected." But again they replied, "Your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man, who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father." Remember, Joseph's father had 2 wives. The second wife, Rachel, his favorite, had 2 sons, Joseph, who we're talking about, and his younger son, Benjamin. The youngest is now with our father, and one, Joseph, he's no more. And Joseph said to them, "It is just as I told you, you are spies, and this is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. He's messing with them. He says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take one of these 10 brothers. I'm going to throw you in prison. And the only way I'll even give you food and consider your request is if you come back, but you bring your youngest brother with you. 9 of the 10 brothers go home. They plead with their father. Their father wants nothing to do with this. He's already lost his favored son. How could he live with himself if he lost Benjamin, the younger son of his favored wife? Through a series of events, a couple years go by, they convince him and they bring Benjamin along. And then Joseph has the second part of the realization of his dream. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. So they're back. They're with Benjamin. There's all 11 of his brothers and Joseph to complete the 12 pack. They're all there. Come close to me. I am your brother. Like, imagine this cinematically. Imagine all 11 brothers standing with their heads down, wondering if they'll ever get back to see their father alive. Imagine them feeling like they're standing in front of some maniac, some power-hungry guy, and they're standing there with their heads down, eyes focused on the ground, and he says, I am your brother Joseph. And instantly, in unison, they look up and they see him and they look at each other, jaws on the ground, because their brother, whom they had sold into slavery to a traveling pack of gypsies, is now in front of them as the second most powerful man in the world. He says, and now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here. Here's why. Because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years, there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. And I want you to get these next 2 words because this might be the linchpin in your life. He says, but God. My life has been hard, and you had no idea what you were doing, but God. Let me talk to you for a moment. Let me leave this alone. Some of you have been hurt and betrayed by people, but God. Some of you have been walked out on by others, but God. Some of you have given up on your dreams because you've tried as long as you can and nothing has come of it. Let me say this to you, but God. It's like God is at work in the story even when it doesn't make sense. He says, but God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here. Here it is again, but God. Like you had a plan, but God was ultimately the one in control. He made me father to Pharaoh, which means second in command, Lord of his entire household and ruler of Egypt. Here's what's happening in the story. Brothers, you need to get this. You sold me into slavery. You thought you were doing the right thing. You had plans to hurt me, but God was in control the whole time. So I want to end today with 3 statements, and here's my hope. My hope is that you leave today with these statements burning a hole in your heart. My hope is that you leave today with this journal and you can't stop this afternoon from writing your dream out because God so gives you courage to pursue your dreams. Are you ready for this? Number 1, you have no idea how long your dream may take. For Joseph, it was 22 years between the moment his brothers maliciously threw him into a pit and he stood before them as second in command in the whole world. It's 22 years. For 22 years when he was thrown into prison, for 22 years when he was accused of rape, for 22 years, I'm sure there was many nights for Joseph where he went to bed saying, how is it possible that this dream could come true? Because it made no sense. You have no idea the timing of your dream because you can't help yourself but to live in the present time. That's all you have. But I want to say something to you. God lives outside of time. And he sees your story from the beginning to the end. All you can see is you in the middle of your story. And I came to say to someone today, you have no idea how long it's going to take. You have no idea how long it's going to take. You have no idea how many days you would call good and how many seasons you might label as bad. But what I want you to understand is in all of those seasons, God is at work so you can trust him. Second thing is this. You have no idea who is counting on your dream. For his brothers who betrayed him, who threw him into a pit, for his brothers who threw him and sold him out from under his father's blessing and from under his father's name, they had no idea that there would be a day that God would use this dreamer of a brother to literally save their lives, the lives of their father, and the lives of countless people in Egypt and all the surrounding region. You have no idea who's on the other side of your dream. Let me say this to you. That business that you want to start, it's not an accident, because you have no idea who might need the job that you can offer someday. That song that's in your heart to write, you have no idea how the words of that song might be used by God to set someone free. That book that's in your heart, stop sitting on it, start writing it, because you have no idea who's on the other side of those pages who needs the freedom that God's going to provide from the words that flow from your pen. You have no idea who's on the other side of your dream. This week, I started the message by talking about the power of our decisions and how one decision can change everything. As I was thinking about that this week, I thought about our church, and I thought how many hundreds of people over the years have made the decision to put their faith in Jesus. How many hundreds of people have gone public with baptism. How many hundreds of people have had relationship miracles happen. How many hundreds of people have experienced miracles in their life. And I think back to all of those moments where it was hard, all those moments where it didn't make sense. I've never been thrown into a physical pit, but I felt the pits of despair. I think about all those moments and I think, man, thank you, God, that in the middle of my story, when I couldn't see up from down, right from wrong, left from right, thank you. Because there was people on the other side of my dream counting on me. There's other people on the other side of your dream counting on you. Please don't stop. Please don't give up. Final thought is this. You have no idea how God is orchestrating the pieces of your life for His glory. We say phrases like this around this church a lot. God's silence doesn't equal His inactivity. I think for a lot of us, that sounds good. You're like, preach, Jason, that sounds great. But then we walk through the valleys of the shadow of death in our own life. We feel like our dream is dead. We feel like we couldn't possibly live to see another day. We feel lost. We feel hopeless. And I just came to say to someone, you need to remember this. That when you find yourself in those seasons that you would label as bad, God labels it as a part of the story that He is co-authoring. It's like any recipe. Any one ingredient taken out of the recipe and eaten in and of itself might be bitter or disgusting, might be terrible. But when used in concert with all the other ingredients, something beautiful comes from it. In the same way in your life, there are some seasons, there is some hurt in your life that I just came to say that God is going to use. I don't have time to go in this now, but cancer is a part of our story. Were it not for my wife walking through a cancer season that I would call bad, this church never exists. Listen to me. You have no idea. You have no idea how God is going to use the parts of your story that make no sense for His glory. But I came to tell someone today, if you will trust the author of your life to be the author and the finisher of your faith, if you will trust Him in the moments that make no sense at all, you too will have the moment like Joseph where you stand in the middle of the fulfillment of your dream. There's some of you that came today that your dream feels a million miles away. Came to tell you, trust Him in the middle of your story. Trust Him and obey. Be successful in the eyes of God and forget the success in the eyes of man. Trust Him in the middle of your story and watch as these moments happen where just like for Joseph, his dream was fulfilled, you step into your moments where your dream is fulfilled. Here's all I wanted to say to some of you today. It takes courage to pursue your dream. It takes finding God's dream for your life. It takes overcoming opposition. That's what we've talked about in this whole series. But the reason all of it matters is there can be a day coming for you where God's word comes true. That whatever God has spoken to you is actually fulfilled. And I want to be there to celebrate with you when all those seasons and all those stories that didn't make sense come together in some beautiful harmony. When all the ingredients of your life are mixed together in a way that produces something beautiful. What do? We trust God with our dream and we obey. Would you bow your head and close your eyes all across this room? I pray for you now. So God, give us courage because it takes courage to trust you. For those of us who are in the middle of a dream season where our dream feels dormant or worse, dead, I pray that you'll breathe life into our dreams. God, thank you that we can trust you in the highs and in the lows. In the days that we would label as good and in the days that we would label as bad, thank you that we can trust you. And in trusting you, we remind ourselves that you are ultimately the one who is the author and the finisher of our faith. God, I pray for this church to dream big new dreams, to trust you, to write down your faithfulness, to remember your goodness, so that we can become the kind of people who step back in the future and celebrate your faithfulness to us. We love you. We thank you for it. With your head still bowed and your eyes still closed, maybe you came today. We're talking about trusting God, but you don't even know God. Maybe that means you've never made the decision to follow Jesus as your Savior. Maybe you've never made the decision, or maybe you're like a lot of people who feel like you did that when you were little, but you've just walked away. Whether that means for you today is starting a new relationship or restarting a relationship with God, if this is you, I want to pray with you right now. If you say, Jason, today I want to make my life right with God, I want to start or restart with him, would you just raise your hand right now? I want to pray with you. Thanks. Oh, wow. Thank you. Yeah, wow. It never gets old to me. So many people just responded. If this is you, would you pray this with me? Say, Jesus, today I give you my life. For the rest of my life, I'll follow you. You be the Lord of my life. Change me from the inside out. Jesus, I believe that you are the Son of God, came into this world and died on a cross in my place. Jesus, because of your sacrifice, I believe my sins can be forgiven, my life can be made new. Jesus, forgive me. I give you my life. I trust you with my heart. I'll follow you all of my days. It's in your name I pray, Jesus. Amen. Hey, church, we just had a lot of people pray. Come on, let's celebrate like it matters. Come on.